November 12, 1928. The air in the sub-basement office of the university's Oriental Institute is a thick, unmoving cocktail of decaying paper, leather binding glue, and the faint mineral scent of baked clay. It's a scent of forgotten things. Dust motes, ancient and patient, dance in the single buttery shaft of light slanting from a high-grated window. This is not a place of discovery. It's a place of storage, a purgatory for artifacts deemed too insignificant for the main collection, but too old to be discarded. It is here that Dr. Eleanor Vance, a linguist with a mind as sharp as a scalpel, is handed her latest assignment. It is not a research grant. It is not a manuscript for peer review. It is a stack of crumbling clay tablets accompanied by a box of drawing charcoal and a ream of high-quality vellum paper. Her supervisor, the eminently respected Professor Alastair Finch, places the box on her small, cluttered desk with a paternalistic sigh that carries the weight of 1,000 small dismissals. "Eleanor," he begins, his voice a low rumble of academic authority, "the department needs a complete catalog of the UROC 4B fragments. Every symbol. A perfect one-to-one transcription for the archives." He taps the vellum. "Your penmanship is exemplary. We need precision, not interpretation." The unspoken words hang heavy in the dusty air. This task is a clerical dead end, a meticulous, soulless job of copying. It is the academic equivalent of being told to do the dishes while the men discuss politics in the drawing room. Eleanor, who had earned her doctorate with a groundbreaking thesis on syntactic evolution in early Semitic languages, is being assigned the work of a draftsman, an artist's assistant, a human photocopier. The tablets themselves are from a collection deemed thoroughly exhausted. The script, a jagged pictographic system, was widely considered a proto-language, a dead-end branch on the evolutionary tree of writing. The consensus, published in journals and reinforced in lecture halls, was that these were simple inventory lists: 3 goats, 10 measures of barley, 5 jars of oil. The symbols were believed to be ideograms, simple pictures representing objects, lacking the complex syntax, grammar, or abstraction of a true living language. They were, in the words of Professor Finch's own seminal work, the silent accounting of a pre-literate people. The field had moved on. The real work was in deciphering the grand royal inscriptions of later empires. This was just housekeeping. Eleanor accepts the assignment with a quiet professionalism that masks a familiar bitter sting. She has grown accustomed to the subtle architecture of exclusion. The way her questions and seminars were answered with a gentle redirection, the way her name was omitted from footnotes on papers to which she had contributed significant research, the way grant opportunities were always discussed with her male colleagues in the faculty lounge, a room she was never invited into. She is a woman in a world built by and for men, a world that values her meticulousness but not her intellect. So she sets to work. Day after day, she sits in that sliver of sunlight, the silence of the sub-basement broken only by the whisper of charcoal on paper. She is tasked to meticulously draw every symbol, and so she does, with a focus that borders on meditative. She captures every crack in the clay, every unintentional slip of the ancient scribe stylus. She isn't just copying, she is communing with the marks. But then something begins to shift. It starts not as a thought, but as a feeling, a subtle dissonance. After weeks of drawing the same symbols in different combinations, her mind, trained to see patterns in linguistic data, starts to detect a rhythm, an underlying structure that has nothing to do with accounting. There is a small recurring symbol, a simple vertical line with a hook, that appears consistently after symbols for people, but never after symbols for objects. An accountant wouldn't need such a marker, but a grammarian would recognize it instantly, a potential case ending, a grammatical particle that distinguishes a subject from an object. It's a whisper of syntax. Then she notices another pattern. Certain symbols for actions, like a stylized hand giving something or a leg walking, are often followed by a cluster of 3 specific marks, always the same 3. This isn't a list. This is conjugation. This is a verb system. Her heart begins to pound, a frantic secret drumbeat against the quiet of the archive. The men upstairs, the giants of her field, had declared this language mute, capable only of counting sheep. They had looked at these tablets and seen only arithmetic. But Eleanor, through the very act of mindless copying they had assigned her, was beginning to see something else entirely. She was seeing poetry. She was seeing narrative. She was seeing the ghost of a voice. The charcoal feels heavier in her hand, no longer a tool of transcription, but a key. The official story was that these tablets were silent, but as she stares at a line of symbols she has just drawn, a sequence that makes no sense as an inventory but flows perfectly as a clause, she realizes the truth. These tablets aren't silent. They are screaming. What secrets did these forgotten symbols truly hold? And why was the academic establishment so determined to keep them silent? Following her initial, unsettling observations, Eleanor's work transformed. The sub-basement office, once a symbol of her marginalization, became her secret laboratory. By day, she produced the immaculate, soulless drawings Professor Finch expected, filling the university archives with perfect transcriptions. But by night, fueled by black coffee and a growing sense of defiant urgency, she conducted her own investigation. Under the guise of cross-referencing archival numbers or proofreading for catalog errors, she gained access to other fragmented texts, dusty scrolls, and boundary stones stored in the university's vast, neglected collections. She was building a data set, piece by painstaking piece, in complete secrecy. The institutional view was set in stone. To challenge it openly, especially as a woman with no senior faculty support, would be professional suicide. Her career would be over before it had truly begun. It was during these clandestine hours that she developed a revolutionary statistical analysis method, a technique utterly alien to the field of philology at the time. Her male colleagues relied on intuition, on the great man theory of decipherment, where a singular genius would have a flash of insight. Eleanor trusted data. She created massive charts on butcher paper, covering the walls of her small office. She meticulously logged every symbol, its position in a sequence, and the symbols that appeared before and after it. She was, in essence, performing a frequency analysis, a technique used by military code breakers, not historians. She calculated the probability of symbol pairings, identified recurring clusters, and mapped the syntactic relationships. She was treating the dead language not as a collection of pictures to be guessed at, but as a structured system of information that could be logically, mathematically decoded. This quantitative rigor was her secret weapon against the qualitative and often biased assumptions of the establishment. The breakthrough, when it came, was not a whisper, but a thunderclap. It arrived on a cold March night in 1931. She was analyzing a large, unusually well-preserved tablet known as Fragment 734. The official catalog described it as a complex ritual inventory, likely detailing offerings to a forgotten god. The establishment dismissed it as repetitive and unimportant. But Eleanor's statistical model flagged it as a massive outlier. The symbol frequencies were completely different from the simple accounting tablets. She found a specific sequence of symbols repeated 12 times, a sequence she had tentatively identified as a proper name. Next to this name, a symbol previously thought to mean given or offered appeared alongside a symbol for a mountain and a symbol for a river. The old guard read it as offerings given at the mountain and the river. But Eleanor's grammatical model suggested a different translation. The hooked particle, her case ending, was attached to Bacchus. He wasn't the recipient of the offering. He was the subject. The verb wasn't give, but conquer. The text wasn't a prayer. It was a chronicle. King Gal Maru, she translated, her hand trembling as she wrote the words in her private journal. crossed the Serpent River and seized the Sunstone Mountain. It was a detailed account of a military campaign, complete with troop movements, named rulers, and political geography. This wasn't a pre-literate society of accountants. This was a complex, literate kingdom with kings, wars, and a recorded history. Her exhilaration was quickly tempered by a cold dread. She knew what she had to do. She gathered her charts, her statistical tables, and her preliminary translations, and she requested a meeting with Professor Finch and the department heads. She laid out her evidence on the polished mahogany table of the faculty conference room. She explained her methodology, the statistical proof, the grammatical rules she had reverse engineered. She showed them her translation of Fragment 734, revealing the saga of King Gal-Maru. She expected skepticism, perhaps rigorous debate. She was not prepared for what she received. A wall of silence, followed by a soft, condescending chuckle from Professor Finch. He picked up her translation, holding it as if it were a piece of childish fantasy. "My dear Eleanor," he said, the words dripping with condescension, "this is remarkably imaginative. A truly fanciful conjecture from a woman who should stick to drawing." Another professor chimed in, suggesting her statistical games were a misapplication of mathematics and that she was seeing patterns where none existed. Her evidence, her data, her rigorous logic, it was all swept away in a wave of patronizing dismissal. Her discovery was deemed too radical, an emotional overinterpretation of simple lists. Her personal diary from that night, now housed in the university's archives, captures the raw pain of the rejection. An entry dated March 17, 1931 reads, "The system wasn't just ignoring her. It was actively protecting its own narrative, a narrative built by men for men." A few years later, a celebrated paper by Professor Finch would be published, tentatively suggesting that Uruk fragments might contain more complex societal records, a vague idea he presented as his own bold new hypothesis. Her name was not mentioned. How could such vital historical revelations be so easily and deliberately swept aside? That institutional wall of silence stood for nearly a century. Eleanor Vance's groundbreaking work, her meticulous charts and revolutionary translations were quietly filed away, buried in the same university sub-basement where her journey began. She never received public credit, eventually leaving academia for a quiet life as a schoolteacher. The story of King Gal-Maru a secret she carried alone. Professor Finch of his contemporaries continued to build their careers on the accepted dogma, publishing books and earning accolades for a version of history that was fundamentally incomplete, a history rendered silent by their own prejudice. Her name and the truth she had uncovered faded into obscurity, a footnote in an unread archival ledger. But the truth, like energy, is never truly destroyed. It merely changes form, waiting for a new catalyst. That catalyst arrived in 2022 in the form of Dr. Eris Thorne, a computational linguist working on a university-funded digitization project. His task was to scan and create a searchable database of the Institute's entire collection of ancient Near East artifacts and associated research notes. While scanning the Vance collection, cataloged simply as Uruk 4B transcriptions, he found more than just drawings. Tucked away in a dusty portfolio were her handwritten journals, her massive hand-drawn statistical charts, and a 200-page unpublished manuscript titled "It Was a Ghost," a fully formed academic masterpiece that history had never seen. Dr. Thorne, using machine learning algorithms to analyze the same set of symbols, was stunned to find his AI models independently generating the same grammatical rules and syntactic patterns that Eleanor had identified with charcoal and paper 90 years earlier. Her work wasn't just correct, it was prophetic. The digitized notes provided irrefutable proof of her priority. Her journals contained dated entries chronicling her discoveries month by month. Her statistical tables, when inputted into modern software, were shown to be astonishingly accurate. And then there was the smoking gun. A series of rejection letters from academic journals, all dated between 1931 and 1933, dismissing her manuscript as unsubstantiated and lacking the rigorous qualitative analysis expected of the field. Most damning of all was a private letter from Professor Finch to a journal editor, unearthed in a separate archive, in which he praised the editor for holding the line against the more enthusiastic and less grounded interpretations of junior staff. A clear and deliberate effort to suppress her work, while he slowly began to co-opt its less radical elements for himself. The evidence was overwhelming. This was not a case of being overlooked, it was a case of systematic, targeted erasure. Modern computational linguists, applying today's most powerful algorithms to the full corpus of proto-linear tablets, have now confirmed Eleanor Vance's decipherments with stunning accuracy. The story of King Galmaru is no longer a fanciful conjecture, it is accepted historical fact. Her work has forced a complete re-evaluation of the period, revealing a civilization with a rich political history, a complex legal system, and a literary tradition that predates what was previously thought possible. Her insights were not just correct, they were decades ahead of her time, a quantum leap in understanding that was rejected and buried. The historical narrative, once rigidly defined by her male contemporaries, is now being fundamentally rewritten to include the vibrant, complex world she first brought to light. The university has since issued a formal apology and posthumously awarded Dr. Eleanor Vance its highest honor. Her unpublished manuscript has been published to international acclaim, and her name is now spoken with reverence in the halls that once scorned her. But the victory is bittersweet, a ghost celebrating a battle won long after the war was lost. The question we must now confront is not merely she discovered, but benefited from the decades of silence surrounding her name. How many other profound truths remain buried under the weight of historical injustice, locked away in an archive, waiting for their moment in the light? The work of remembering is not passive. It is an active, ongoing fight to reclaim the voices that were silenced, ensuring that the future of discovery is open to all, regardless of who they are. The greatest tribute we can pay to Eleanor Vance is to relentlessly seek out the other stories that have been erased, and to finally let them speak.